The risk of trading for the futures and options can be substantial. Welcome to the Markets Club podcast with Cesar Delgado. We're glad you're here on the Markets Club podcast. We were talking to the Illinois Chemical Association with KJ, Kevin Johnson. We were discussing with update on Illinois Chemical Association with him on the Markets Club podcast. You can listen it on whenever get your podcast. We were coming back with Kevin Johnson. Stay tuned on the Markets Club podcast. Today, we were joining with Kevin Johnson, aka KJ from Illinois Chemical Association. Welcome to the show. How are you, KJ?
I'm doing great on this Wednesday afternoon. Like I said, we might get a little rain to give this crop a little shower, give a drink. So it's a good place to be in Central Illinois right now.
Let's start with our conversation about updates from the Illinois Chemical Association.
So yeah, it's been actually great summer so far. A lot of stuff going on. Biggest thing is we just wrapped up the Illinois General Assembly session here at the end of May. There's a lot of bills that were pertaining to agriculture, and especially on pesticide-related issues down at the Illinois State Capitol. And we actually defended most of those pieces of legislation off when they left home, when the legislators left home. Two of the biggest pieces of legislation we were working on pesticide-related was Senate Bill 2757 that would get rid of pesticide preemption in the state of Illinois. And a lot of our listeners, farmer listeners, and even ag retailers don't truly understand what pesticide preemption is, but it's one of the biggest things that we have for Illinois agriculture. And what pesticide preemption means is that the state of Illinois, and specifically the Illinois Director of Ag, and which is Jerry Costello right now, regulates all pesticide in the state. If we did not have pesticide preemption, a county, a city, a municipality, or even a homeowners association could ban Roundup or any other products. The state does pretty much follow what US EPA off their labels. So we are super highly in tune with that, and we totally support pesticide preemption. But there was a bill, Senate Bill 2757, to get rid of pesticide preemption. We fought back with the ag groups to get that put on the sidelines. The other one that was out there that we got pushed back, if you got any friends in New York, last year the state of New York passed a bill to ban not just neonics, but any pesticide seed treatments on any seeds. And what they did is they put that in effect starting January of 27. That legislation did make it back to Illinois and pretty much had the same timetable to get rid of all pesticide-related seed treatments. We did push back with the sponsor of that bill, got it pretty much knocked back that they were not going to get it called in committee because they did not have the votes. So those are two biggest pieces of legislation we're watching. And then the other one we were watching was House Bill 1634. And I think most of your members might have seen something from one of our associations or commodity groups or just looking on Facebook. But this bill would bring California emission standards to all semis and heavy trucks here in the state of Illinois. And if you know anything about the California emission standards, or what they call CARB, pretty much all trucks 2011 have to go through emission standards, but they do phase out older trucks. So if you had an older truck, a 2002 or 1987 truck, they are phasing those trucks out. And that legislation did come here to Illinois. We did beat it back with the commodity groups. There's a lot of opposition, but I definitely think that bill is going to come back next year or in the coming years regarding that. So we got to be vigilant of what it is, because I am on a farm and a lot of our ag retailers have trucks that are older than 2011. And if there's a phase out, it's going to definitely harm both the retail and the agricultural world on what those emission standards look like.
What is the House bill for pesticides regulation? What about dicamba?
So there was a bill out there this year to ban all dicambas, and not just on agriculture, but on dicambas are used a lot in lawn care too. There was conversations about that bill, but it never did get any traction from the state down at the Illinois General Assembly. So that was a good thing. I think most people are watching, we all know that there was a court case in February to stop the sale to dicamba, and that's still into effect. You cannot move that product anymore after May 13th, and then there's a complete stop sale order or cutoff of when you could apply that to June 12th. We are having questions with the manufacturers right now of if a farmer or retailer does have product in their hands, what do they do with it? Is there going to be a buyback program, something like that? Because right now you couldn't sell that into another state. You do also have the registrants, and that's pretty much Bayer, BASF, Syngenta, that are putting different labels going forward, what dicamba looks like over the top of soybeans. And all three companies have a little different view of that. EPA has technically 18 months to re-review those. EPA already has those labels. We're going to see what happens here in the coming months with dicamba. But you guys got to remember, this is all because of a court case that happened back in February, why EPA is in this position.
How is these fertilizer prices for right now alongside with wars and inflation, especially in Baltimore situation?
So right now, you got to remember this is usually the low time of the season on fertilizer because we're coming out of application season. So when I was just looking at some prices, there is a weekly price update of what's going on fertilizer, and then I've looked back a year. If you're actually ammonia, we're $40 a ton cheaper than we were a year ago if you were buying it today. Some of the other stuff is either flatlined or a tick higher. I think we'll get a better idea of what's going on with the fertilizer markets that last week of October, first week of September, going into some stuff. Right now, I think it's a flat line. I mean, we don't love to say this, but it does kind of fluctuate. If you put a map of corn prices and fertilizer prices all in the same, it's kind of tracking. And if you know what's going on with the corn market right now, it's been going down, and I think you're seeing that go on with the fertilizer market. What I am hearing, at least through the retail world, the biggest discussion is transportation cost. It's costing anywhere from $80 to $100 to get that transportation to its final destination point. So there's where we're racking up the biggest increase of price is just the transportation cost. There's actually a lot of ammonia that moves up the river. So we've had some rains. I mean, I don't want to see what happened up in Iowa to everybody with the flooding, but their least is the water levels in the Mississippi are in good. That stuff is moving. If we get into a drier situation and we can't move as much stuff up and down by barge, that transportation cost is going to go up. So I think there is some prices for fill for this fall already out there that are pretty, what I would say, reasonably cost. I think you're going to see some guys pulling the trigger just of what is out there. But the biggest thing that's being talked about in the retail world is just the transportation costs from when you buy it to get it to your ag retail location.
Illinois farmers are worried about it or not about it.
Yeah, they should be worried. I mean, I think it depends what goes on here, especially the river. I mean, we always talk about corn and soybeans going down the river. We don't always talk about the fertilizer makes it up the river. And, when that river is low or there's any kind of problems, it affects everything because it just puts so much more on the trucking industry. But as we speak today, And if there's a good buy in the late summer, like what we call August fill or September fill, I think you could see it good. The transportation costs ain't great, but are reasonable. But if we get in any kind of pinch on with the river, that's going to just only raise that price on transportation cost.
KJ, what does the farmers about their responses from the shipping cost and freight?
Yeah, so just kind of like what I originally said, on ammonia right now, it is about $100, $80 to $100 just for the shipping to get it to where it needs to be. So if we're buying up the river, there's ammonia coming out of New Orleans, it's costing about $80 and $100 a ton to just get it up the river for transportation cost. That's on top of everything else. So it is a huge deal. And we are actually probably sitting in the best shape as anybody because we also have pipelines that can ship some of that ammonia from one place to the other. So a lot of ammonia might come up the river to St. Louis, but then go into the pipeline and get transported through the rest of the state on there. If you're in one of the Dakotas, your shipping costs are only going to be more than what a East Central Illinois or Central Illinois farmer is. So we're watching those shipping rates as much as possible, but then also see if there's any effect on any shipping going into the future.
How about P and K in the Mississippi River Delta?
Yep. We have seen some shortages on the MAP and DAP, and I think you have seen where they're from prices from this right now to last year. It's about up probably $70 a ton. We're hoping that that kind of comes back a little bit on where we're at, but right now you're seeing that a higher rate. But that's probably the biggest one if you're seeing it is on the like the MAPs and DAPs. On the phosphates, we're seeing about as equal price as it was last year at this time. Again, this is going to start going into the fall fill season, going into the fall application season. So these are usually your better prices if you can get a price out there. But if you're looking at the dries, the MAPs and DAPs or the phosphates, you're definitely seeing more of volatility in the MAPs and DAPs than you're in the phosphate market.
Is there anything would you like to go to tell our listeners about these fertilizer prices?
I think you need to, like everything, just like marketing your growing soybeans, you need to keep an eye of where stuff is at. Have a good conversation with your retailer. If there's a good opportunity to pull the trigger on something, have that conversation. But in a lot of ways, that means you're going to be writing a check that day to get the best prices on there. If it has to be, hey, I'm thinking about buying it now, but trying to push it, have storage till fall, there's going to be an increase in price. So I just tell people have a good communication with your retailer, your fertilizer supplier on if you're going to pull the trigger, keep asking what a price could be. And if it looks like it pencils out on your farming operation, because I know every farming operation is different, pull that trigger while you think it's is a good price or what's profitable to you.
What do you recommend from the retailers?
If you're talking about the actual prices, you know, just have open conversations. I think it's a two-way street on conversation with farmers and retailers, when to lock in prices, type of stuff. Because going to fall, we had a heck of a fall fertilizer season. I think we were actually ahead of the game going in the fall fertilizer season. And we're seeing still more as the fall fertilizer season goes on, more pounds going out that time of year. So if you can lock stuff in at again a price that is profitable on your operation, lock it in. But also know what we are seeing in the fertilizer markets is, you know, manufacturers just aren't giving a price as a day. They are, spreading that risk out also. So we, as a retailer, we might not always have all those pounds in the shed to say, yep, you can buy right now, just because of how that some allocations might go. But again, have good communications with your retailer of what they have in stock, and if you're going to pull the trigger and try and get ahead on buying some stuff going into the fall.
Do you have any final thoughts on this segment?
Caesar, I just appreciate you having me on. The only thing, final thoughts I would tell you, a couple things that we are working on is we have our big Maggie show August 21st and 22nd here at the McLean County Fairgrounds. And the Maggie show is the largest outdoor equipment show specifically on fertilizer and chemical application equipment. And what makes us different than any other show, than the Farm Progress show and stuff like that, we have 40 acres where you can get in that new sprayer and unfold its wings and actually drive. You can actually drive yourself that sprayer. So I'd love for everybody to come. If you want to go to ifca.com, you can register. Again, that is August 21st and 22nd at the McLean County Fairgrounds. The other thing is on September 5th at the Farm Progress Show site in Decatur, us and the Illinois Soybean Associations are going to have a 4-hour field day talking about what research IFCA and Illinois Soybean Associations are doing on nutrient stuff, but also on cover crops and some of those issues. So that's a free to attend. Would love to see everybody at the Farm Progress Show September 5th. So a lot of great things going on, and then we'll won't be very long, and we'll be actually in the field starting to harvest. But it don't seem that far away, but we're getting closer every day.
Thanks, KJ.
Thank you, Caesar. Thanks for having me.
Johnson for the Illinois Chemical Association in Bloomington, Illinois, on back roads of Illinois.
Thank you, Caesar, for having me, and I hope your listeners have a.
Thanks, KJ. We were glad to hear about Illinois Chemical Association with him. Well, folks, there are our show for today's program. For the Markets Club podcast, I am Cesar Delgado. Have a good day.